Most people think no fucks to give means apathy. It doesn't. Apathy is weakness disguised as peace. True detachment is strength that no longer needs permission. What people call no fucks to give is not carelessness. It is the moment the psyche stops bleeding for approval. And Carl Jung understood this better than almost anyone. Because Jung didn't teach confidence. He taught integration. And when a human being integrates, they naturally stop begging the world to like them. Here's the truth no one tells you. If you still care what everyone thinks, you are not fully yourself yet. And that's not an insult. That's a diagnosis. From a Jungian perspective, excessive concern with others' opinions is not morality. It is identification with the persona. The persona is the mask, the role, the image you learned to wear so you could survive, be accepted, be loved. At first, the mask protects you, but eventually it suffocates you. And most people never take it off. They confuse the mask for their identity. They confuse politeness for goodness. They confuse being liked with being real. So when someone says, I just don't give a fuck anymore, what they're really saying, if it's genuine, is, I have stopped outsourcing my self-worth. That's not arrogance. That's psychological adulthood. Let's go deeper. The reason people care so much about others' opinions is simple. They have not yet faced their shadow. The shadow is everything you were told was unacceptable. Your anger, your intensity, your ambition, your sexuality, your selfishness, your hunger for power, your refusal to be small. So you learn to suppress it, and whatever you suppress does not disappear. It waits, it leaks, it controls you from underneath. That's why people who try to be nice are often the most passive-aggressive. That's why people who claim they don't care are secretly obsessed with validation. That's why people who preach morality are often terrified of their own impulses. Jung warned about this. When the shadow is unconscious, it runs the personality. But when the shadow is integrated, something radical happens. You stop pretending, you stop over-explaining, you stop justifying your existence, you stop needing permission to take up space. That's where no fucks to give is born. Not from numbness, but from wholeness. Because once you accept that you are capable of darkness, you no longer panic when others misunderstand you. You already know who you are. And here's the uncomfortable part most people avoid. If someone dislikes you, it does not automatically mean you're wrong. Sometimes it means you are no longer playing the role they needed you to play. Sometimes their discomfort is evidence of your growth. Jung understood that individuation, the process of becoming who you actually are, is isolating. Not because you become unlovable, but because you become uncontrollable. You stop mirroring expectations. You stop reflecting projections. You stop performing emotional labor for other people's comfort. And people notice. They call you cold, detached, selfish, different. But what they're really reacting to is this. You are no longer feeding their psychological needs. And here's where most people sabotage themselves. They feel the pull back into conformity. They think, maybe I should soften this. Maybe I should explain myself. Maybe I should care a little more. No, that impulse is not kindness. It's fear. Fear of abandonment. Fear of rejection. Fear of standing alone in your own truth. Jung said that the greatest burden a child must bear is the unlived life of the parents. But that burden doesn't disappear in adulthood. It just changes shape. It becomes the expectations of society, the unspoken rules, the invisible contracts, and breaking those contracts feels like death to the ego. That's why people cling to approval even when it costs them their soul. So what does real detachment look like? It's not indifference. It's not cruelty. It's not emotional shutdown. It is the ability to remain rooted in yourself even when misunderstood. It is the ability to disappoint others without collapsing. It is the ability to say, this is who I am, and not negotiate your identity. That's Jung's work in action. Because individuation does not make you nice. It makes you real. And real people are polarizing. They don't fit neatly into categories. They don't obey every social script. They don't constantly ask, is this okay? They act from inner authority. And once that authority is established, something strange happens. Criticism loses its sting. Praise loses its grip. You listen, but you are not owned. You receive, but you are not dependent. You care, but you are not enslaved. That's the paradox. When you truly have no fucks to give, you actually become more capable of genuine compassion. Because you're no longer giving from fear, you're giving from choice. And choice is power. Let's talk about anger for a moment, because this is crucial. Most people who care too much about others' opinions have disowned their anger. They were taught that anger is bad, dangerous, unacceptable. So it went underground. But suppressed anger turns into anxiety, self-doubt, people-pleasing. Jung understood that anger, when conscious, is a boundary. When integrated, anger says, no. No explanation, no apology, no collapse. A person with healthy anger does not need to scream. Their presence is enough. That's why some people intimidate without trying. They are internally aligned. They are not leaking resentment. They are not smiling through self-betrayal. They have resolved the inner civil war. And that resolution is what others feel. Now here's the truth most motivational content avoids. You will lose people when you stop caring. Not because you become heartless, but because some relationships were built on compliance. Some people only loved the version of you that was controllable. When you remove that version, the relationship dissolves. That's not a tragedy. That's clarification. Jung said neurosis is always a substitute for legitimate suffering, and losing approval is legitimate suffering. But it is necessary suffering, because on the other side of it is integrity. And integrity is the foundation of inner peace. You don't get peace by being liked. You get peace by being aligned. So if you're at a stage in your life where you feel yourself pulling back, speaking less, explaining less, tolerating less, that's not regression. That's maturation. You are not becoming colder. You are becoming contained. Your energy is no longer bleeding outward. It's consolidating. And when that happens, you stop chasing. You stop proving. You stop defending yourself in imaginary conversations. You stop rehearsing who you need to be. And suddenly, you have no fucks to give. Not because you don't care, but because you finally care about the right thing. Your soul, your truth, your psychological health. And that is something no external opinion should ever control.